Good afternoon and welcome everyone. I'm Maureen Conway. I'm a Vice President at the Aspen Institute and Executive Director of the Economic Opportunities Program. And I'm thrilled to welcome you all to this webinar to talk about our Job Quality Fellowship. Um, uh, we're excited to see the nominations for this class coming in, and we're looking forward to talking more about it. But let me quickly just start to give you an overview of what are we going to do in this hour that we have. So first, I'm going to give you a little just overview of our logistics. Then I'll go through some of the background of the Job Quality Fellowship. Then I'm thrilled that we're going to get to chat with two of our Job Quality Fellows, and I'm not going to call them former because once a fellow, always a fellow. So Bo Delp and Neidi will be here with us. And then we'll really be wanting to spend a lot of time on Q&A with all of you. The webinar is really meant to sort of give you the information that you need about the fellowship now. So we're hoping to spend the bulk of time on that. There is a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. So at any time during the webinar, please do put questions in there and we'll get to them as we can. We want to give a special thanks to the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, the Cerna Foundation, Prudential Financial, and the Gates Foundation for their generous support of our Job Quality Fellowship. And thanks to all of you for joining today. So on the technology, quickly, everyone is muted, but we'll be handling your questions through the Q&A box. So please put your questions there. We also invite you all to please introduce yourselves in the chat. And also, we know a lot of you work in this space, so please feel free to share any comments, information, ideas, resources that you think folks might find interesting there as well. If you have any technical issues, you can chat to us or you can send us an email at eop.program@aspeninstitute.org. The webinar is being recorded and we'll share the recording on our website after this webinar. So also closed captions are available for this discussion. So if you would like to use those, please click the CC button at the bottom of your screen. Okay, and just to now sort of give you a little update on where we are in the recruitment process. So the nomination process is open. You can nominate yourself or you can nominate somebody else. The deadline for nominations is Sunday, May 18th. You must be nominated to receive an application. So if you're not sure, if you think somebody else nominated you, but you're not sure, just go ahead and nominate yourself. And that way you'll be sure to be in the nomination pool and receive an application. We review the nominations on a rolling basis to determine eligibility. So eligible nominations will receive an application the Monday following when they submitted their nomination, with the first applications being emailed next week on Monday, May 12th. So if you think you should have gotten an application and you didn't, you can always send us an email and check on that. The application itself, the full application is due Sunday, June 22nd at 11:59, apparently, p.m. Eastern Time. We'll be reviewing applications throughout the summer, and the final class of Job Quality Fellows will be announced in mid-September. Okay, so just to give you a little background also on the fellowship itself. So the first class of Job Quality Fellows was launched in 2017, and we were really interested in highlighting a diverse set of leaders who were engaged in practical action to improve the quality of jobs. And in the Job Quality Fellowship, we're focused, I'm going to say, less on fixing workers and more on fixing work. So what do I mean by that? What I mean is that the outcome, the kind of outcome we're looking for people to be working towards is sort of the unit of analysis is the job. We're looking to see how can the job be improved. We know that millions of people are in low quality jobs and struggle with the burdens of low wages, unstable schedules, unsafe working conditions, issues of discrimination and harassment, not having any agency or input into how their workplace operates. There's a lot of different facets of job quality, but the work of job quality fellows is really about addressing some of those issues and improving the job quality of the job, so that regardless of who the job holder is, that job becomes better and more rewarding and meaningful for the person who is in the job. We recognize that a lot of people focus on work to help people move out of lower quality jobs and into better jobs, and that work is important. But just to be clear, that's not the focus of what the Job Quality Fellowship is working on. So like I said, our interest is really on sort of improving the job and less on sort of improving an outcome for a specific individual or group of individuals. Let's see. Also, I just wanted to say, one of the reasons I think I feel very passionately about the work of the Job Quality Fellowship and job quality in general is because I think that all jobs really can be good jobs, right? It is possible for jobs to be better. We don't have to have so much poverty wage work. There's a lot of different ways that jobs can be improved, and a whole variety of different actors. So we've had businesses that are trying to use better business models to improve the quality of jobs. We have labor leaders who are trying to organize workers and help them have more negotiating power so that they can improve the quality of their jobs. We have people who are in local government. We have people who are in community development finance institutions who are working with their small businesses to try to improve better jobs. We have people who provide technical assistance in economic development or in employee ownership. There's just a whole wide range of things that can be done to improve the quality of jobs. I recently wrote a little piece about job quality and how we think about it and the range of actions people can take to try to contribute to better jobs. So we think that there's a variety of different things that folks can do, and we're hoping to hear from a whole variety of them in our next fellowship. As I mentioned, our first two cohorts were really intentionally diverse, really trying to cover that sort of whole waterfront of folks that could play a role in job quality. Our last cohort had a little bit of a more narrow focus, I would say. Our fellows were focused on this intersection of workforce development and worker organizing and advocacy to advance workers' interests and boost job quality. Regional focus. Our new class of fellows will be made up of job quality practitioners who are taking action to advance job quality in the South. Compared to the rest of the country, the South has high rates of poverty, has not very good health outcomes, shortened lives, other outcomes of poor job quality. And one thing I will note about the South, though, is that the narrative kind of digging in and exploring that and thinking about what are the different ways we could organize things. We're excited to sort of work with a group and sort of co-learn together about how we might do that. So what is the South? We know there's not a single standard. You can use the US Census definition or the Council of State Governments definition as a guide. We really welcome applicants from anyone who sees themselves as based in and contributing towards an improved job quality experience in the South. Okay, so fellowship expectations. Just a quick note on that. So one thing we ask of fellows is that they commit to being present and fully participating in the fellowship. We recognize everybody is busy and has lots of demands on them. And so we try to be thoughtful about what the demands are that we're making. The meetings, we have 3 meetings They're delivered, they are live and in person, unless some significant changes in public health require us to do otherwise. They're scheduled for October 26th through 29th, 2025, February 23rd through 25th, 2026, and June 8th through 10th, 2026. And it's really important that in-person time for the fellows, I think, is just really the heart of the experience and really important to get the full value out of the fellowship. So we really ask people to commit to being fully present for those meetings. We provide opportunities for fellows to remain actively engaged between those in-person meetings throughout the year. Fellows will stay in touch with program staff and other fellows. We have virtual meetings with Aspen staff. We may have some readings or additional homework sort of things before each of the meetings. And, and really we are trying to provide also opportunities to collaborate and elevate the work of fellows and really bring more attention to the important work that fellows do in their communities. So there's lots of different ways we might interact around those kinds of issues. Okay. So now I am going to move into our conversation. So I will note that Neidi Dominguez, who I mentioned will be joining us, had warned us that she would be running a little late for personal reasons. So I'll say who she is, and then I'll turn to Bo. So Neidi Dominguez is the founding executive director of Organized Power in Numbers, formerly known as Unemployed Workers United. Neidi is a committed organizer, experienced campaigner, and visionary strategist in the immigrant rights and workers' rights movement. She's an Aspen Job Quality Fellow from the 2022-23 cohort. And so we will be welcoming her when she's able to join us. But now I'm going to introduce Bo Delp, who I'm so delighted to see here with us today. Bo is the executive director of Texas Climate Jobs Project, a statewide nonprofit advancing a pro-worker, pro-climate agenda, and dare I say it, a pro-Texas agenda to build the Texas labor movement. And of course, was an Aspen Job Quality Fellow also in the 2022-2023 cohort. So thank you so much, Bo, for joining us today. And just to get started, can you just maybe you can just say a little bit about sort of a little bit about your background and the work you do and kind of what drew you to applying to the Job Quality Fellowship.
Definitely. And thank you so much for having me, and hello to all of you. Really excited to be here to talk about this fellowship. It was an incredible experience for me personally, but it was also very productive and beneficial for our organization. And excited to dig into some of that. But just by way of background, I've been in the Texas labor movement for about a decade now. Many years ago, I started out at an organization called the Workers' Defense Project. Some of you may be familiar with it. It is a worker center that is committed to organizing undocumented immigrant construction workers in Texas. And have also been in the labor movement at Unite Here, the hospitality workers union, working for Local 23. For those of you familiar with Unite Here, Local 23 goes from Texas and stretches across the South and includes New Orleans, Biloxi, where the casinos are, as well as Atlanta up through Virginia. And it represents food service workers and hotel workers. And since 2021, I was the founding staff member for Texas Climate Jobs Project, which, as Maureen mentioned, is a nonprofit that's committed to advancing a pro-worker and pro-climate agenda. And we work very closely with labor unions across Texas. That's pretty diverse. It's the building trades, but it's also SEIU Texas. It's the teachers union, the steel workers, the power plant operators, who used to really fight around climate change and job quality, and what are we going to do about all these new industries that are emerging. But I think because of their intentionality, have been able to come together to really think about how we raise standards in some of these industries. And we've been very honored to get to work with Neidi on one project in particular that I hope we get to talk a little bit more about. So I've been in Texas, working in Texas and to some extent the South for the last decade, and just very excited to be here with y'all today. I saw the Aspen Institute Job Quality Fellowship came across my inbox, and I was encouraged to apply. Let me tell you why I decided to do that. I decided to do that because there's a lot of conversations in my work, even here in Texas, but I know across the country in philanthropy around what it means to have a good job. And, it turns out that means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And it kind of depends on what industry you're in. When I was at Workers Defense Project all those years ago, undocumented immigrants don't have access to registered apprenticeship. And so having a union in the traditional apprenticeship route is not really an option for many, like half of the Texas construction industry. And so we had to have these conversations about what does it mean to have a good job if you don't have a union in the construction industry. Here we had people whose wages were so low they were sleeping at the airport and were being discriminated against. And of course, Texas Climate Jobs Project, we have found that Texas is on the one hand this huge emitter of carbon emissions. It's also this incredible leader in renewable energy, but it's also leading in low quality jobs in things like solar and wind and the supply chain jobs that have been emerging because of the Inflation Reduction Act. It was incredible to get so many people into one room talking about what it means to have a good job and job quality. And I think it's really important because of this variety of perspectives. And, I would say that Maureen mentioned earlier, this intentionality around people being present. And I really would just echo that. It is incredible to get so many leaders in a room together who put their phones away and turn their laptops off for a little while and really dig into these questions. And I will say for myself, as the person who leads Texas Climate Jobs Project, it really helped evolve my own understanding of what it means to have a good job and to learn from other leaders in other parts of the country that were experimenting with new models of raising job quality and just getting those very concrete examples from people who are trying new things in order to raise the floor for people. So it was a great experience for me personally. It was a great experience for us as an organization, and I couldn't recommend it enough.
Yeah, thank you so much, Bo. And welcome, Neidi. I shared your background with folks before you joined. Thank you so much for joining us today. So I see a couple of things. One that I apparently froze a little bit before. So I think I'm going to ask if people wouldn't mind just if there was something important that I actually said and they missed, if maybe some of my colleagues could let me know specifically what it is people might need me to repeat, that would be great. But Neidi, we were just beginning our conversation, and really thank you again for being here. And I hope that I just wanted to start with just asking you, to sort of say a little bit about the organization that you lead, but also what drew you to applying to the Job Quality Fellowship.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? It froze for a little bit. You okay? Okay. Yeah, I'll share just a little bit about Organized Power in Numbers. We originally were named Unemployed Workers United, and we launched during the pandemic on Labor Day of 2020. And our original plan was to talk to unemployed people online and support them through applying through unemployment benefits, but fight for more, right? In that moment, so many of us were feeling the whole floor be shaken out of our feet. And there was so much need in our communities. And from the beginning, we decided to focus on the Sun Belt, the Southeast and the Southwest for many reasons. But one of them was just like the deep disinvestment for many generations from government, philanthropy, where we also know and acknowledge so much of the progress in this country has actually come from those regions and the long history of organizing there. And so we really wanted to figure out a way to move as much as we could resources into that region for the work. You know, almost 5 years into it, we have evolved in many different ways, where we really have evolved to be what we call ourselves like a public utility for the movement infrastructure in our region. We have built ourselves to be able to support projects like Bo's at the Texas Climate Jobs Project. There's about 60 plus organizations and local unions that now we provide technical support or access to technology and data to do organizing in their campaigns. And the whole time it was always really focused on, you know, the question around what are good jobs, right? Like, I think that's so essential, right? And so for us, coming from working with unemployed folks to now supporting campaigns and projects like the Texas Climate Jobs Project and others, where we're trying to figure out how do we create more good union jobs in our region? How do we create more training opportunities for local people that have been mostly left out of a lot of these industries and sectors, and especially in this moment where there's so much growth in our region? And I don't think it's a coincidence that it's happening in our region, that it's happening in Texas and North Carolina and Arizona. The corporations are coming to that region because there are states that are mostly deregularized, not a lot of rules for them or demands, and where our wages are still depressed in comparison to other parts of the country, right? And so we know what's at stake. We know that if we don't organize, if we don't do these things, many corporations, many companies will come. But the question really is it going to do anything for us in our communities unless we make it do so? So that's what we do. And applying to the Good Jobs Quality Aspen fellowship, honestly, when I first saw it come through my email, like Bo and other people kind of reaching out and saying, have you looked at this? You should consider it. At first, I really felt like a fish out of the water for even thinking about it, because I had never thought about our work from the lens of workforce development only. Like, of course, that was always part of the question, right? And like part of the many things that we had to consider. But I never thought of myself as someone that could bring something to the table or as some sort of expert on it, you know? And so I felt actually I felt like it was a stretch for me to even try, but I went for it. And, you know, being part of the process, you know, Bo and I knew each other from before, but we had never had like intentional space in a room without our phones, without our computers, to sit and talk through just so many different aspects of our work. And it was really being in the fellowship. You know, at least this is my side of the story. Bo can tell you his. I really do feel like it was the fellowship that made that space, that then made it so that we can connect in this different way that we had before, and then figure it out that actually we could help each other, right? That we were in the same region, we were trying to answer the same questions, and that we had some things that could be helpful to the great work that Texas Climate Jobs Project was already doing. And so we've been really lucky, honestly, to be able to help out and support and make it be real, and very proud of the work that they have accomplished, that collectively we have accomplished in Texas. So I encourage folks that are in the webinar, if you're sitting there like, I don't know, like, I don't think of myself as an expert on workforce development, that you are in your own way, and that we need more of you and our voices in this region, because it's the region where so much growth is happening, but it's not looking like a benefit to our communities, and we need it to be. So,
yeah. Thank you, Neidi. And I guess so a couple of things. Apparently I froze when I was talking about sort of the economic development model in the South and why it's is a challenge. But I think, Neidi, you articulated it beautifully that, the challenge is sort of businesses that come in and sort of they think of labor as a cost and trying to get low cost labor. It's sort of this low, as well as cheap environmental resources and no regulations on that side too, right? And that's just been and I understand, like I've spoken to lots of folks that do economic development in the South, and it seems like it's always this, what I feel like is really a false trade-off. It's like either we take crummy jobs or we get no jobs at all. And I feel like it's like that's not how we should be thinking about it, that we can think good jobs are possible. Good jobs can be good business, right? Because all of the costs of people who have unstable lives, who are sleeping in the airport, if you're sleeping in the airport and then showing up to work the next day, you're tired. You're not going to bring your best effort, and you're certainly not going to be motivated to bring your best effort. So there's lots of reasons that giving people a dignified, good job can be also good for business. And we can think about different structures and different ways to make that work. And that's, sort of what we're hoping to do, and to have a different way of thinking about this rather than getting stuck in this kind of false trade-off of like, either we can have a successful business or we can have good jobs, but somehow we can't have both. Like that just to me is not right. And honestly, if we get good jobs, like I feel like that should be our leading indicator of a successful economy, not business profits. But anyway, and you alluded, Neidi, I think a little bit to the partnership that you and Bo have. And one of the questions I saw also come up in the chat here was, to describe a little bit about the curriculum of the fellowship and what happens. And so I can say a few words about that we do a variety of things. We bring in guest speakers, and I'm going to mix up other fellowships and your fellowship, so I'm not going to say too much about that. But we do a mix of things. We might give you readings and then, sort of have some group discussions around them. We might do some sort of practical problem solving around specific issues that one of the fellows might present, or things like that. We might do some work together on imagining a shared statement around jobs, or a shared policy idea that we want to think about advancing, or things like that. So there's kind of a mix of sort of like reading and thinking together, some bringing in external resources and people, and some sort of, workshop-y problem solving kind of things, like I guess I would say. But I feel as I describe that doesn't really describe sort of like the experience of the fellowship and why it's meaningful. So I'm wondering, Neidi and Bo, and either of you can jump in first, how you would say sort of what stands out to you in terms of the structure of the fellowship experience and what was valuable about it.
Yeah, I think there are some very specific things that stand out to me. I think to your point, Maureen, and I think maybe we can talk a little bit about this. Like, I think just the partnerships that emerged from being able to share with each other about some of the projects we were working on and noticing overlap. And the readings were really critical conversation starters. We would have readings around job quality and what that meant and how to think about what it means to have a good job. And it was, very generative in terms of all of a sudden we were talking about our work specifically, and then we noticed overlap. And from there, I think real partnerships emerge. And so just from a very practical perspective, not being high up in the clouds about it, but from a very practical perspective, we went from kind of the theory of a good job to how are we trying to manifest that in our work, and how can we work together. So I think that is really what stands out to me the most, is just how these conversations with people in different parts of the country led to ongoing collaboration. I think was really, really beneficial.
Yeah, I would only add to that. I felt like you all were very open and flexible to also kind of meet the moment from our own reactions to the setup and curriculum. Like I remember clearly, I'm not sure if it was the first gathering or the second, where we were broken into groups, and then one of the groups came out like, we really need to talk about like the standards, and like if it's not a union, what's in the middle of it. Because in the room we had people like Bo and I who are come from organizing, but you had people that only come from training or business owners themselves. And it was for me, it was the first time in a room where I was in the room with like a company CEO or someone that, you know, does the HR for a large company. And now we're having these conversations. And I really felt you all were open and flexible, that when you felt there was like real agitation and like something happening in the room, you're like, okay, let's just pivot to that. Clearly, that's the conversation we should be having. And I really appreciated that. I think that sometimes that could actually like kind of kill off the synergy happening in the room. And you all really were great at feeling that and listening to us.
Yeah, thank you, Neidi. Yeah, I think that is the sort of, generative tension that we want to sort of lean into when we find those places where it's, you have that. I feel like that's where you can really also, start to deepen understanding of like how different actors kind of come to a particular issue. So I appreciate you bringing that up. Maybe you both could tell everybody a little bit about the partnership, sort of, I mean, you knew each other before, but you kind of cooked up this work together during the fellowship. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about sort of what you kind of were able to do together and the role you think the fellowship played in helping you envision that and move that forward.
Yeah, I'll start, but maybe, definitely fill in the blanks. I remember a very specific conversation that Neidi and I had on the way to dinner with the other fellows. I think we were in DC. I don't recall that was where that one was, and we were on our way to dinner. We were just talking about each other's work in a casual way. So at Texas Climate Jobs Project, we were, trying to figure out how to capture what we intuitively knew about some of these clean energy industries. We had been hearing from workers, they weren't getting treated right. People often get paid by the piece, like per solar panel that you install. So you work as fast as you can. And by definition, there's no shade on a solar project. People are overheating, they're getting sick, they're having to go to the hospital. Texas is the only state that doesn't require workers' compensation insurance coverage. So if you do go to the hospital, you're often on your own paying out of pocket for your medical bills. So we had all this kind of like anecdotal, intuitive data, but we wanted to have, an academic report that really started to detail this. And we knew we wanted to go out into the field and survey people about working conditions. But then Neidi was like walking me through what they do as an organization. The word you used earlier was like the public utility for movement organizations. And, how Neidi started talking about all the ways that, then Unemployed Workers United could be helpful in helping us get that off the ground. And so we're just so lucky that conversation happened, because we wouldn't have known otherwise. I don't know that I would have known. And so we were able to collect over 1,000 surveys from non-union solar, wind, and clean energy supply chain workers across the state, at some really remote places where solar and wind sites are, but also more urban manufacturing facilities, solar panels, talking to workers about their conditions. And Neidi's team was so helpful in helping us capture that data and store that data and interpret that data. We worked really closely with Cornell University and put that report out. And it's been, really important in terms of shifting the conversation. I think a lot of people in Texas often assumed that a green job was a good job or a better job than, and it turns out that's just not true. And in fact, some of these working conditions are really just worse than some of the more traditional energy jobs, and that's not a good thing. And so the kind of last piece to this is that Harris County, under the Inflation Reduction Act, won, where Houston is, won $250 million to implement their portion of what's called the Solar for All grant with the Environmental Protection Agency. And across the state, cities and counties are installing community solar and putting solar on public buildings and on county-owned land. And we got the strongest labor standards in the country on that Solar for All award. And one of the reasons why we were able to do that is because we were able to help decision makers understand, to educate them that there's a real crisis that workers are experiencing in the solar fields and in the wind fields that has to be addressed. And as many of you know who do this kind of work, you can bring worker after worker and they can share their stories, and that can be so powerful. And for some decision makers, for some politicians, sometimes it's really important for them to have a report from Cornell University that says, like, it's not just this one person. 70% of solar workers that were interviewed don't have health insurance. And so I think that was a transformative moment in our ability to do that. And that work is ongoing, but we're really proud of that. And that partnership really emerged from the Job Quality Fellowship. And I'm really grateful to Aspen Institute and to Neidi for all of y'all's support on that.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to add. That's literally what happened. I think maybe the one part would be like we also grew through this project with the Texas Climate Jobs Project. Like, we had tested some things around like data gathering and geofencing to find workers that were like specifically connected to an industry or were workers in that industry. But this one was a challenge, right? Because of the way that it was decentralized, because it was locations that were very rural. Like, I remember somewhere in the middle of the project, we were like, okay, we need to figure out how to get to those workers, because we were kind of exhausting our kind of more digital based way of finding them. And like, I took my like data director out to the fields of Texas so that we drove into them so we could get a sense of what did it look like, so that we could get more creative on like, well, maybe we should be geofencing the gas stations near there or the restaurants near. Like, it was truly a partnership in both ways, where I feel like our team learned so much about how do we use technology and digital tools and data in a way to actually work on the ground for actual worker organizing to advance these agendas. So we learned a ton out of that. And we're very happy that we got to the 1,000, and that report has been leveraged in so many different ways. And we're still working together. So, 2 years into it, like, we're still working together. We're still thinking about what's next. Even under this new political terrain that we find ourselves, like, Bo and I are thinking through with our other partners, like, how do we meet the moment, right? And like, not back down from the things that we have won, especially in our region.
Yeah, thank you, Neidi. I'm just listening to you talk about that and thinking about how everybody was so excited to learn about like geofencing and just the different ways you think about getting data and everything, and how much the group learned from you guys. And so, I was also thinking about that with you, Neidi, saying like, I didn't feel like an expert, and I was thinking, oh, everybody learned so much from you. So, really appreciated you sharing your brilliance with the group. We have this question, and I just wanted to try to address it, but I'm probably also going to ask you your if you have thoughts as well. To what extent is the purpose of the fellowship to shift the broader state systems in which jobs are located, particularly in states that have historically prioritized employer power over worker economic security? And how much of the work is centered on changing employer level practices versus transforming the state systems themselves? In other words, where is the center of gravity for improving job quality through this fellowship? And I feel like the answer is like, yes. Because I think that we are thinking about a variety of different systems that influence the quality of jobs. So employer practices influence it, employer cultures and mindsets are big guides for employer practices. Those can influence state systems like state policies, as we too often see in so many states, can be ignored with little penalty. So only getting a policy change sometimes isn't enough to actually get what you need. Only getting employers who want to do the right thing sometimes means they're swimming against the tide in a system that's in a political system or a policy framework that's not really supportive of that. So, and then where is there a chance to move something forward? The ground shifts around a lot. And sometimes the thing that you thought was going to work is not the most promising thing, as maybe, you know, things shift. There's a different way in. And I feel like the fellows bring a lot of creativity to thinking through those problems and kind of problem solving together around sort of where's the opportunity, where's the center of gravity now, what's promising, but also thinking about who am I and what are my strengths, right? And how do I match my strengths with your strengths, and maybe together we get something done. So I feel like I just gave a big non-answer to this question. And I'm wondering, Bo or Neidi, if you would like to help elaborate on my non-answer about, you know, sort of how we think about sort of shifting systems to improve job quality.
I think it's both, right? And things that we haven't even thought about probably. And I feel like, especially in this moment, right, where there's a lot of like almost weaponizing our own government against ourselves right now. And I think that we're going to have to get creative. So I think it's both. Like whenever we can, we think about private agreements with specific employers. And sometimes that's literally a collective bargaining agreement, right? And then that's where I feel like worker organizing and union organizing are key to this question as well. Sometimes is pushing for like municipal governments to adopt better policies, like where in our region, even though it's very red and very anti many of the things that we want to do collectively, but do we have a local county commission, a local city council where we can advance, you know, passing project labor agreements or passing community benefit agreements, or not calling it project labor agreements, calling it something else because that's preempted in our state, but advancing that agenda. And I think we have to do all of it, right? So I never felt like the fellowship had like a predetermined choice around what strategy was the right one. It really did feel like it was whatever made sense for us on the ground, right? Because I think what's really exciting about this fellowship, or, you know, I wish I could be a fly in the wall. Maybe I'll come visit at some point. Is that it's so focused in this region, right? Where like when we were in the fellowship, we had people from different parts of the country. And so Bo and I got to like really feel a lot of synergy because we were facing the same problems in our region, but we learned a lot from our peers from other places and got creative ideas. You know, it may look different for us in the South, in the Southwest, but there were still good inspirational ideas too. So I think it's really exciting to be all together just thinking about the region, though. I think I'm excited about what could come out of that as well.
I mean, I'll just add, that I agree with all that. And I think yeah, look, the Job Quality Fellowship was like a really great balance of being like purposefully, with some of the readings and stuff being like purposefully provocative to generate conversation, but also not having an end goal in mind. It was really to like generate this conversation among people who are all kind of in this trying to figure it out. I think, Maureen, to your answer, for us in Texas anyway, for many of us, it's a simple equation. You build people power to build political power to build economic power. Someone once told me that, public policy is power frozen in time. And so when we think about overtime and the weekends and the 40-hour work week, these are all things that are enshrined in legislation when the labor movement nationally had this huge resurgence in union density. In Texas, we often say, well, what's the difference between Texas and California? And what part of that answer is a really big, strong labor movement. If you look at California in the 80s, it produced Ronald Reagan. But over time, the labor movement had a key role to play in transforming the politics of California. But labor relations in this country is employer-based. And so you have an employer-based labor relations system that we have to engage employers on around job quality. But when you think about the labor movement, and I mean that very broadly, not just unions, you have to sort of engage around policy. Policy is this kind of power frozen in time. So it's both. And I'm just very, very excited that the focus is on the South. I know for those of you that do work in the South, how many national convenings and conversations have you been a part of where it's like, we could do this and we could do that. And it's like, okay, I'm going back home to where they ban books. So I'm going to need something a little different here. But I think it's really, really incredible what the Aspen Institute is doing in focusing on the South, because in so many of those spaces, it's the elephant in the room, because we all know that in the South, the power dynamics are so different, and we have so much that we're up against. And so to have a space for people, coming from the South and thinking about the South to get to talk, I think is really cool and exciting.
Thank you. It had been one of my questions to ask you. So like, what did you think when we said we were going to focus on the South? So I really appreciate you saying that. Thank you. Thank you, Neidi. There was a question here about the final product of the fellowship, like a report or white paper or policy recommendations. And I do want to emphasize, and I think Neidi, you alluded to this, we really try to respond to the energy of the group. And is there something that they want to do together like that? So our first Job Quality Fellows issued a statement of purpose that really sort of was their articulation of how do they think about what job quality means and why it's important. After we did 2 cohorts, there was interest among the alumni, and we actually were able to do a little bit of work with them to do sort of a policy document around what job quality means. From our fellows, that a number of them had basically the experience of our fellows deeply informed when we first launched our job quality tools library, trying to sort of tap the wisdom of the fellows for their tips and tricks of like, what do we do in our organization specifically to try to implement our work and our strategies, and trying to think about what a job quality practice looks like in different kinds of organizations. So that was very much, that wasn't a product of the fellows per se, but it was really motivated by listening to the fellows and by talking with them and by thinking about their experience and what might make it easier for others to sort of follow in their footsteps. So different classes might do different things, and they might do things as a small group, or they might do things as the whole class. So, but we do try to be responsive for something like that to the energy of the group, because, I feel like there's no point in me assigning you to like all try to write a paper together if it's not a paper you're interested in writing. So that, I guess that's how I would answer that. But Bo or Neidi, I don't know if there was something that you thought as a group we should have maybe tried to facilitate more, or something that you would hope that a group focused on the South would think about as a product, or just in general, what you hope for out of this group focusing on the South.
If I'm remembering correctly, and I may not, so please tell me, Bo or Maureen, I feel like the decision to do the white paper, I think, was a little bit agitated by the organizers in the room, because I'm just gonna be really transparent here. I think if I remember correctly, we really wanted to put what we had discussed and the agreements that we had come to in some form, shape or form, because we did have people that work with big employers in the room. And I think I'll speak for myself. I felt like it felt important that we left something behind where it was being affirmed by like a diverse group of voices that otherwise wouldn't have actually been able to put their name on a document together. Because honestly, most of the time we probably would have found ourselves in an antagonistic relationship across the table from each other, and it was a very unique space to be able to be in a space to maybe disagree on some things, but on the things that we did agree to, like, kind of leave it somewhere, as kind of the report that Bo made, right? Like, as a tool that we can keep using for the future. So I don't know if I really have any ideas of like what this group will feel inspired or be moved to do. I imagine, just because of like the dynamics that we face as organizers, as practitioners, as people that want to just do this work in our region, we're constantly being given tools that are not useful to us, like Bo said. So I imagine that some of you will feel the like fire in your belly of like leaving something behind for others. And it may not be a document, like maybe it ends up being like a panel or a webinar or a video or something else. But I just know our people in our region, and I know we're always ready to give and extend our support. So I'm sure something will happen. But I don't have any idea what that should look like. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel the same way. Yeah, I wouldn't want to prejudice it, because I think one of the cool things is when everybody gets together, it just kind of, it can go all kinds of different directions. And what I would say is, if you do decide to participate and do, the advice I would give is just be open to what it could be and what could come out of it, because I went into that having no idea that I was going to leave with this big, organizational partnership with Organizing Power to Numbers. It's been really cool. So, yeah.
Great. Thank you both. So we're coming up to time, and I'm just going to encourage if there's any more questions. I see one more question is, how is progress measured, and during what timeframes, quarters, years, et cetera? How is success defined by the program? And that's I will admit that is a somewhat difficult question for me, in that, and you could probably tell by sort of how I described the change process. So I think there are certain things that that we sort of do in terms of thinking about like who's participating, how successful are we in curating a group that sort of represents diverse perspectives and in the way that's appropriate to this situation. Sort of ways we engage people, ways we bring in resources, and then things like, partnerships that come out and things like that. So there are some basic things, as one does, that you track, for, you're accountable to your funders and others, right? But I think the way I think about success of this group is how is more in the ways that they connect, that the fellows connect with each other, that they find common purpose, and that they have this opportunity, which I do think is really rare for so many of us in, you know, busy professional lives, to sit back, reflect, and have some time to have some aha moments about what's working, what's not in their work, and their true like passion of why they came into this work and what they want to accomplish in the world. And to really then be able to think about, not if I just had this like nice aha moment in this meeting, but how do I now operationalize that? And it's just, you know, it has been, I think, for me and for my colleagues in this, so rewarding to see so many fellows have that experience, and really kind of go forward and, you know, really make important changes in the world. So, so that's how I think about success. But Neidi or Bo, I don't know if you want to add anything about that. Great. Well, I am not seeing any notes from my colleagues that I've missed any sessions, and we only have a couple of minutes left. So let me just quickly, before we close, I just want to ask you, Bo or Neidi, if you have any final words of advice, or final thoughts, or anything you're trying to plug. If you have any final comments that you want to share before we close.
Yeah, if you know, for those of you that are considering doing it or have already applied and want to be connected, I live in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Like, I'm in your region, so if you want to reach out, please feel free. Yeah, just, you know, let's keep growing this network of us in our region that are thinking about all of this together. So, you know, just good luck with everything and reach out, you know, however we can help, we're more than happy to.
Thank you.
I definitely echo that, and just to echo something else that Neidi said earlier, you know, many of us, particularly in the South, we're stretched thin. You know, there's so much to do and so little time and resources to do it. I know it can be challenging to think, you know, what would it actually look like to go participate in this? Maybe you're thinking there's a lot of organizing to do, and there is, but your perspective, you know, in the South, organizing workers, organizing communities around job quality is really needed, and really, really important. And I think people need to understand, you know, what it's like to do this work in the South, and you are the person to provide that perspective. And so if you're not sure if you're the right fit, or if there's just so much going on, I would really encourage you to apply, because it's been very beneficial. It ended up being just an incredible value add to our work as an organization. So it was really great, and glad I did it. And I hope you do too.
Great. Thank you both so much. Thank you everybody for joining us today. If you had any additional questions or things you think of later that you didn't get answered, you can always send us a note at eop.program@aspeninstitute.org. I know I frequently think of things later, or things that I didn't really feel like sticking in a chat in front of everybody because maybe it's not a very clever question or something. So don't be shy. Please reach out if you have any questions. We're really glad that you could join us. And don't forget that to get your nomination in before May 14th, and applications are due June 22nd. Thank you so much, Neidi and Bo, for being here. Really such a pleasure to be in conversation with you. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Maureen.